A Song of Ice and Fire, the Conquest of Aegon. In the cold halls of Old Town, where aged maesters bend over towering shelves of parchment and leather-bound tomes, one truth has been whispered through the centuries. The history of Westeros did not begin with the Iron Throne, but with fire. A Song of Ice and Fire, George R.R. Martin's masterwork, is a chronicle of dynasties born in blood, of power passed through betrayal, and of oaths that melt faster than spring snow. The world knows it best as Game of Thrones, yet that game is only the visible surface of a far greater mass beneath, thousands of years of war, conquest, and extinction. And if one moment must be named as the true beginning of a new age in Westeros, it is neither the death of a king nor the forging of the Iron Throne. It began when dragons first cast their shadows across the skies of Westeros. This was the conquest of Aegon Targaryen, before dragons touched Westeros. House Targaryen was not born of Westerosi soil. They were neither first men nor Andals. Their blood carried the mark of fire and sorcery, things the Western continent neither understood nor trusted. They came from Dragonstone, the grim island that guards the narrow sea. Yet Dragonstone was only a refuge, not their origin. To understand House Targaryen, one must look further back, to an age when Westeros still slumbered in barbarism, and Essos was ruled by a name spoken with fear and awe alike: Valyria. Valyria, Empire of Fire and Blood. Nearly 5,000 years before the events of A Game of Thrones, in the eastern lands near the volcanic range known as the 14 Flames, lived a small and unremarkable people. They were neither wealthy nor powerful, and the world paid them little heed, until the day they discovered dragons. No one knows precisely how the Valyrians first mastered these creatures. What is known is that it was not through kindness. They used chains and whips, blood and forgotten sorcery. Dragons were broken, bound, and turned into instruments of war. From that moment on, the fate of the world bent to Valyria's will. With dragonfire, the Valyrians expanded their dominion. Cities melted. Armies burned to ash. The ancient Giscari Empire, which had ruled Slaver's Bay for millennia, was destroyed. The Rhoynar, masters of rivers and old magic, were defeated. One city after another fell. The last queen of the Rhoyne, Nymeria, chose survival over submission. She gathered the remnants of her people, placed them aboard 10,000 ships, and fled west to Dorne. That journey saved a people and planted the seeds of a new culture in Westeros. When the smoke cleared, Valyria stood alone at the summit of the world. The 40 Dragon Lords. Valyria was unlike any empire that had come before. There was no king, no emperor. Power was shared among 40 Dragon Lord families, each possessing dragons, lands, and authority of their own. They ruled through absolute strength, and dragons were their final, unquestionable argument. Among those 40 houses stood House Targaryen, not the strongest, not the richest, not the most influential in Valyria's councils. A minor dragon lord house, easily overlooked amid the inferno of Valyria. No one could have imagined that this modest lineage would be the only one to survive. The doom of Valyria. No enemy ever defeated Valyria. Only the world itself could. In the year 114, before the conquest, the skies above Valyria darkened and the earth began to scream. The volcanoes of the 14 Flames awakened together as though ancient gods had risen in wrath. Hills split apart. Ash and smoke blotted out the sun. Flames burned so fiercely that dragons were consumed in midair, reduced to charred bones before they could flee. Cities were torn open by colossal fissures. Temples, towers, and palaces vanished into the howling earth. Lakes boiled. Mountains exploded. Fountains of molten rock shot hundreds of feet into the sky. From blood-red clouds fell black, jagged hail, sharp as blades. The ground collapsed, the sea rushed inland, and Valyria's heart sank beneath the waves, giving birth to the smoking sea, which still steams like an unhealed wound. Offshore, a towering tsunami struck the city of Velos on the Isle of Cedars, killing hundreds of thousands in a single moment. In one night, the Valyrian freehold was erased from history. A dream that saved a bloodline. Yet not all perished. 12 years before the doom, Daenerys Targaryen, daughter of Lord Aegon Targaryen, dreamed of Valyria drowning in fire and darkness. The vision was too vivid to be dismissed as fancy. Aegon believed. He gathered his entire house, along with 5 dragons, and fled Valyria, crossing the narrow sea to Dragonstone. When Valyria shattered, House Targaryen lay beyond the reach of destruction. They survived. They remembered Valyria, and they kept their dragons. Generations later, from that bleak island of black stone, fire would rise again. Westeros would bend the knee, and history would carve one name into legend: Aegon Targaryen, the Conqueror. The birth of Aegon Targaryen and the gathering storm of Conquest. After the doom of Valyria, House Targaryen became the last dragon lords in the known world. They made their home on Dragonstone, the westernmost outpost the Valyrian freehold had once raised to trade with Westeros. It was not merely a fortress, but a gate of stone and fire, locking the narrow sea. Dragonstone stood astride every route leading into Blackwater Bay, where the most vital sea lanes of Westeros converged. Beneath the waves, House Velaryon of Driftmark provided the Targaryens with a formidable fleet, hardened by salt winds and naval warfare. House Celtigar of Claw Isle held the heart of the narrow sea in its grasp, like a claw closing around all who passed through. Above them all, dragons ruled the sky, a form of power no wall nor host of men could ever truly defy. Measured in strength alone, House Targaryen possessed more than enough might to seize parts of Westeros, or even carve out a new empire in Essos. Yet for more than a century they remained still. The Lords of Dragonstone understood what others did not. Dragons were not immortal, and a single reckless war could doom the last surviving blood of Valyria, just as surely as fire and ash had consumed the rest. So they waited. And then Aegon Targaryen was born. The 3 heads of the dragon. Aegon was born in 27, before the Conquest, the only son of Lord Aegon Targaryen. He had 2 sisters, Visenya, the elder, cold-eyed and severe, with steel in her bearing, and Rhaenys, the younger, bright of spirit, fond of song, laughter, and life. By the ancient customs of the Valyrian dragon lords, marriage between kin was not only permitted, but required, a means of keeping the blood of the dragon pure. Aegon was expected to wed Visenya, yet his heart belonged to Rhaenys, and Aegon did what only a dragon lord would dare. He married them both. This union was more than defiance of Westerosi custom. It was a declaration of Valyrian supremacy. Dragons did not bow to the laws of lesser men. Even before their wedding, all 3 were already dragon riders. Of the 5 dragons House Targaryen had brought with them from Valyria, 4 had died over the long years that followed the doom. Only one remained, a living terror from the Age of Empire. Balerion the Black Dread, who had once flown over Valyria at the height of its glory. Yet fire does not die so easily. 2 new dragons hatched from ancient eggs, Vhagar and Meraxes. Aegon rode Balerion, whose shadow could swallow entire cities. Visenya claimed Vhagar, fierce and merciless as her rider. Rhaenys flew Meraxes, swift, graceful, and unpredictable. 3 dragons, 3 riders, 3 heads of a single beast. Some say that Aegon Targaryen never set foot in Westeros before he came to conquer it. That may be true. Yet one thing is beyond doubt. He understood Westeros better than any of its kings. Many years before dragonfire crossed the narrow sea, Aegon ordered the carving of a great wooden table, upon which the entire realm of Westeros was rendered in relief. Mountains, rivers, forests, roads, castles, and borders were etched with painstaking care, as though the land itself already lay beneath his hand. Aegon knew every realm and every ruler. The North, ruled by House Stark from Winterfell. Dorne, held by House Martell at Sunspear. The Westerlands, rich with gold, ruled by House Lannister from Casterly Rock. Passaut, the Reach, the breadbasket of the realm, governed by House Gardener from Highgarden. The Vale, with its impregnable mountains, ruled by House Arryn from the Eyrie. The Iron Islands and the Riverlands, both under the iron hand of Harrenhal, ruling from Harrenhal. The Stormlands, ruled by House Durrandon from Storm's End. To Aegon, Westeros was not merely a land to be conquered, it was a game board, and every king upon it was a piece with weaknesses to be exploited. Among all the rulers of Westeros, two commanded Aegon's closest attention. Argilac Durrandon, the Storm King, had once been a fearsome warrior. In his youth, he had driven back Dornish incursions, crossed the narrow sea to fight Volantis, personally slain King Garce Gardener of the Reach at the Battle of Summerfield 20 years earlier. But Argilac was now old, and his only heir was a daughter. More dangerous still was Harrenhal, remembered by history as Black Harren. His grandfather, Harwin Hardhand, had torn the Riverlands from the ancestors of Argilac. Harren's father extended Ironborn dominion eastward to Duskendale and Rosby. Harren himself raised Harrenhal, the greatest castle Westeros had ever known, upon the shores of the God's Eye. As Harrenhal rose stone by stone, the Ironborn were given free rein to raid and plunder. Harren ruled through terror, and his cruelty became legend throughout the Seven Kingdoms. No king in Westeros was more feared than Black Harren, and no king felt more threatened than the aging Storm King, Argilac Durrandon. In his growing desperation, King Argilac sent envoys to Dragonstone. He proposed a marriage between Aegon Targaryen and his daughter, offering as dowry the lands east of the God's Eye. On the surface, it was a generous offer. Aegon saw through it at once. Those lands did not belong to Argilac. They lay under the rule of Harrenhal. Argilac sought to use Targaryen strength to reclaim territory he had lost, at no cost to himself. Aegon refused. He declared that he already had 2 wives and required no third. Instead, he proposed that the marriage be granted to Orys Baratheon, his closest companion, a mighty warrior, and the acknowledged bastard son of Aegon Targaryen. To Argilac, this was an unforgivable insult. In a rage, he committed the greatest mistake of his life. He cut off the hand of Aegon's envoy, sending it back to Dragonstone with words of mockery and open defiance. Aegon did not answer at once. He summoned Visenya, Rhaenys, and his allies. After many days of council, a decision was made. Ravens took flight from Dragonstone, winging their way across all of Westeros, bearing a message that could not be misunderstood. From this day forward, there shall be only one king in Westeros. Those who kneel before Aegon Targaryen shall keep their lands and titles. Those who stand against him shall be destroyed without mercy. And so, Aegon's conquest began. The day Aegon landed in Westeros, there were no blaring horns, no vast host rolling forward like a flood. The greatest conquest in the history of Westeros began in silence. In the year 2, before the conquest, beneath the gray skies of the narrow sea, sails bearing the sigil of the 3-headed dragon slipped away from Dragonstone. It was not a grand armada. Aegon Targaryen's force numbered only some 1,600 men, composed of Targaryen household troops, the sailors of House Velaryon, warriors sworn to House Celtigar, and a handful of sellswords. By numbers alone, it was a small host, almost insignificant when set against the kingdoms of Westeros. But Westeros had never faced dragons. Above the fleet, 3 vast shadows circled the sky. Balerion, the Black Dread, oldest and greatest of them all, flew slow and majestic, his wings stretching wide enough to darken the sea below. The fire within his breast was the fire of ancient Valyria, the same flame that had once reduced empires to ash. Vhagar, fierce and violent, roared as she swooped low, as if she could scarcely wait to taste war once more. Meraxes, swift and graceful, flew higher, circling like a poised spear ready to strike. 3 dragons, 3 riders, 3 heads of a single fate. The fishermen along the coast saw them first. Many fell to their knees, believing the sight a sign of divine wrath or the end of days. Word spread faster than the sea wind itself. Dragons had come to Westeros. Aegon did not land at a great city. He did not strike at Storm's End, nor did he march upon Harrenhal at once. Instead, he chose a barren headland where the waters of the Blackwater Rush met the Gullet. A place with no king, no castle, no history. There, Aegon ordered the construction of a crude fortress of earth and timber, ringed by ditches and sharpened stakes. In later years, it would be remembered as Aegon's Fort. Upon that very ground, King's Landing would one day rise. Aegon planted the banner of the 3-headed dragon upon a rocky height overlooking the bay. There was no throne, no crown, yet from that moment onward one truth was beyond dispute. Westeros had been entered. The kings of Westeros did not react as one. In the north, King Torrhen Stark received the news with the cold caution of a man raised in snow and stone. He summoned his bannermen, but did not rush to war. In the Vale, Shara Arryn ruled as regent for her young son. She believed the Eyrie unassailable, for no dragon could land upon its sheer and narrow peaks. In the Reach, King Mern Gardner laughed at Aegon's small host, convinced that no foreign lord could stand against the largest army in Westeros. At Casterly Rock, King Loren Lannister did not laugh. He calculated. But in Storm's End, Argilac Durrandon raged. Argilac Durrandon was the only king who acted at once. He gathered the hosts of the Stormlands and marched north in person, determined to crush the invader before he could take root. Argilac did not see Aegon as a king, only as a foreign lord with a few monstrous beasts. He was wrong. The battle was fought amid driving rain, howling wind, and thunder tearing the sky apart. History would remember it as the last storm. Visenya rode Vhagar through the blackened clouds. Rhaenys and Meraxes struck like lightning, and Aegon, upon Balerion, brought a storm greater than any born of sky or sea. The Stormlanders broke, horses panicked, formations shattered. Argilac Durrandon fell amid the rain, and with him ended the ancient line that had ruled the Stormlands for thousands of years. Storm's End was not burned. Aegon kept his word. After the victory, Aegon granted the Stormlands to Orys Baratheon, his closest companion and most loyal war leader. Orys wed Argella Durrandon, the last daughter of Argilac, thus securing his rule by both conquest and blood. Thus was House Baratheon born, forged in thunder, steel, and dragonfire. One kingdom had bent the knee. 6 remained. Across Westeros, eyes turned eastward, toward the coast where smoke still drifted above fields scorched by flame. Aegon did not hurry. He had set foot upon Westeros, and from that moment on, no king could afford to ignore him. The true war had only just begun. The fall of Harrenhal. No castle in Westeros was ever razed with greater arrogance than Harrenhal. It was not merely a fortress, but a challenge. A challenge to rival kings, to time itself, and in the end, to dragons. Harrenhal was built by Harren Hor, known to history as Harren the Black, upon the shores of the God's Eye. It is said that he forced 10,000 peasants and stonemasons to labor without rest for 40 years. Those who slowed were slain. Those who collapsed were built directly into the walls. Its 5 immense towers rose like stone fingers clawing at the sky. The curtain walls were so thick that wagons could ride abreast along their tops. Harren believed no army could ever breach such a stronghold, and in that belief, he was correct. No army could. When word reached Harrenhal that Aegon had landed in Westeros, Harrenhal stood upon his mighty walls and laughed. It is said Harren declared, "Let him come. My walls are thicker than his fire." While other kings hesitated, Harren placed his faith entirely in stone and steel. He withdrew his forces into the castle, recalled the Ironborn to Harrenhal, sealed the gates, and prepared for a long siege. Harrenhal had never fallen. Harren believed it never would. Aegon brought no siege towers, no trebuchets, no drawn-out assault. He brought Balerion. As night fell over the God's Eye, the air grew heavy and still. The wind died. The lake lay unnaturally calm. Then, the darkness moved. Balerion the Black Dread appeared above Harrenhal like a living nightmare. His vast wings blotted out moon and stars. His roar shook the stone beneath men's feet and sent soldiers trembling within their armor. The fire Balerion breathed was no common flame. It was the fire of ancient Valyria. Dragonfire slammed into the towers. Stone melted like candle wax. Walls once thought unbreakable glowed red, then flowed like molten metal. One tower collapsed after another. Iron twisted. Wood vanished in a heartbeat. Ironborn soldiers fled in panic across the yard, their armor heated red hot and fused to their flesh. Screams echoed through the night, mingling with the thunder of collapsing stone, the dragon's roar, and the sound of fire devouring all. Harrenhal and his sons sought refuge in the tallest tower, trusting that its thick stone would shield them. They chose the wrong refuge. Balerion circled once more and unleashed his fire directly upon the tower's crown. The heat grew so fierce that the stone exploded from within. Harren the Black died in flames born of his own pride. When dawn broke, Harrenhal was no longer a castle. It was a corpse of stone, twisted and scorched, its towers bent and broken as if crushed by the hand of a god. The walls still stood, but forever warped and melted. Aegon did not linger. He left Harrenhal as a warning to all Westeros. No wall is thick enough to withstand a dragon. No crown is heavy enough to defy fire. From the ashes of Harrenhal, House Hor ended forever. The Riverlands were freed from Ironborn rule, and the River Lords began to come forth to bend the knee before Aegon Targaryen. From that moment on, the remaining kings of Westeros understood a single truth. This war could not be won with walls, and the dragons had chosen the fate of kingdoms, the Field of Fire. If the fall of Harrenhal was a warning, then the Field of Fire was the sentence passed upon those who still believed that men could stand against dragons. In the south of Westeros, the fertile Reach and the gold-rich Westerlands remained the greatest powers yet untouched by Aegon's advance. King Mern the Ninth Gardener, last of House Gardener, brought forth the full might of the Reach. At his side marched King Loren, the first Lannister, the Lion of Casterly Rock, a king who had never known defeat in battle. They did not come to parley. They came with more than 55,000 men, armored knights gleaming, spears raised like a forest of steel. To them, Aegon was merely an invader with a few thousand soldiers and 3 flying beasts. For the first time in Westerosi history, 2 kings joined their hosts to face a single enemy. They believed numbers would crush dragons. Aegon Targaryen did not avoid them. He did not retreat, nor did he seek more men. Instead, he chose a wide, open plain, where wind could carry flame and fire could spread unchecked. Later generations would give this place its dreadful name, the Field of Fire. At Aegon's side stood his sisters and wives, Visenya, mounted upon Vhagar, and Rhaenys, astride Meraxes, 3 dragons. three shadows upon the sky. When the armies clashed, the earth shook beneath pounding hooves and the roar of tens of thousands of men. Spears shattered on shields. Swords rang against armor. At first, the combined hosts of the Reach and Westerlands held the advantage. Then the sky ignited. Balerion struck first, his black-red flame sweeping through ranks of knights like a storm of destruction. Vhagar and Meraxes followed, sealing the field within a ring of fire. Horses screamed, men fled, but there was nowhere to run. Steel armor became furnaces. Wooden shields vanished in flame. Dry grass caught fire, and the wind drove the inferno faster than any cry for mercy. It is said that within an hour, the green plain had been transformed into hell. King Mern the Ninth Gardener stood fast among his guards, refusing to retreat. He believed a king of the Reach should die as a king, and so he did. Balerion's fire fell upon the spot where the Gardener King stood. Mern, his sons, his grandsons, and nearly every male of House Gardener were burned to ash in a single moment. With them, a dynasty that had ruled since the Dawn Age ended in fire. House Gardener, which had held the Reach for thousands of years, was extinguished upon that field. King Loren Lannister chose another path. Seeing his ally consumed by flame and his army shattered, Loren understood that continued resistance meant annihilation. He ordered a retreat, gathered what men he could, and fled westward. For the first time in history, a king of House Lannister bent the knee. In Aegon's camp, Loren Schicht. Lannister knelt, surrendered his sword, and swore fealty. Aegon allowed him to retain rule over the Westerlands, but henceforth only as a vassal. The Field of Fire claimed more than 4,000 lives, most of them burned. Those who survived bore scars for the rest of their days, upon flesh and memory alike. From that day on, no one doubted the power of dragons. The Reach lost its king, its dynasty, and was forced to submit. Aegon named Harlan Tyrell, Steward of Highgarden, as Lord Paramount of the Reach, marking the rise of House Tyrell. The Field of Fire became the symbol of a new truth. Steel cannot defeat fire. Numbers cannot defeat dragons. After that battle, Westeros understood that Aegon's conquest was no longer an invasion. It had become destiny. The submission of the Reach. After the Field of Fire, the most fertile land in Westeros no longer echoed with the blare of war horns. Instead, there was a heavy silence over scorched fields, where embers still smoldered and the stench of burned flesh lingered in the air. The Reach, a land that had fed half the continent, had lost its king, lost its dynasty, and lost the illusion that human strength could stand against dragons. The death of Mern the Ninth Gardener was not merely the end of a battle, but the extinction of House Gardener, a line that had ruled the Reach since the Age of Dawn. No male heirs remained. No rightful crown existed for the lords to rally around. In that moment, the Reach became a kingdom without a king, yet crowded with powerful lords, each with the armies and ambition to ask the same question: why not me? The Hightowers of Old Town, the Tarleys of Horn Hill, the Rowans of Golden Grove, the Florents of Brightwater Keep. Each house possessed blood, banners, and cause enough to stake a claim. Had Aegon delayed, the Reach might have fallen into civil war. But Aegon Targaryen never delayed. Amid the rising chaos stood one man without a crown and without command of a great host, yet possessed of a keen understanding of true power. That man was Harlan Tyrell, Steward of Highgarden. When news from the Field of Fire reached Highgarden, Harlan did not call his banners. He did not shut his gates. Instead, he threw them open, ordered the roads cleared, raised white banners upon the towers, and personally prepared to receive the Conqueror. When Aegon Targaryen arrived at Highgarden, he found no spears, only open gates. Harlan Tyrell knelt before Aegon, offering the keys to the castle, the granaries of the Reach, and his sworn loyalty. No fire, no blood, no more fields turned to ash. Aegon understood exactly what the Reach required. Not a new conqueror, not a foreign king, but stability. House Tyrell held no royal blood, but they possessed three things Aegon needed: wisdom, the ability to govern, and loyalty unburdened by ancient claims. Aegon named Harlan Tyrell Lord Paramount of the Reach and Warden of the South, granting him high garden and rule over the Reach in the name of the Iron Throne. With a single decision, Aegon averted civil war in the Reach, preserved Westeros's breadbasket, and raised a steward's house into a new pillar of the realm. Other lords may have resented it, but none dared object while dragon shadows still crossed the sky. Only Old Town remained, the oldest city in Westeros, where the high tower rose like a beacon of history and the seat of power of the Faith of the Seven. Had the High Septon called for holy war, the realm might have burned. Aegon knew this, but the High Septon knew something as well. It is said that after praying through the night in the Starry Sept, the High Septon dreamed of a three-headed dragon standing before the seven-faced throne. When dawn came, he opened Old Town's gates and proclaimed that the Seven had accepted Aegon Targaryen as the rightful king of Westeros. Old Town submitted. The Faith submitted. The Reach bent the knee in full. No dragon needed to breathe flame in the Reach again. Yet from that day forward, every lord of the Reach understood that their prosperity endured beneath the shadow of dragons. Crops would still grow, flowers would still bloom, but Westeros had entered a new age. The Reach, the land of life, chose to kneel rather than burn, and Aegon Targaryen, through fire and wisdom alike, turned a military victory into a lasting peace. Torrhen Stark and the kneeling of the North. If the South bent before fire, then the North bent before reason. Torrhen Stark, remembered by history as the king who knelt, was no coward. He was king in the North, bearer of the ancient blood of Winterfell, a descendant of Brandon the Builder, and a man long accustomed to war and winter's cruelty. When word of Harrenhal melting and the field of fire burning reached Winterfell, Torrhen did not scoff, nor did he dismiss it. He listened, and he understood. Dragons care nothing for courage. Fire makes no distinction of honor. Though he grasped the danger, Torrhen could not kneel without first testing fate. He called his banners and led some 30,000 Northmen, marching through the Neck and down to the southern bank of the Trident. On the far side of the river waited Aegon Targaryen, with his 3 dragons. The two hosts encamped opposite one another, separated by water and night. Each watched the other, yet no war horn sounded. It was a long night. Torrhen Stark did not sleep. It is said he walked alone through the camp, gazing upon the watchfires of the Northmen, men who had followed him from frozen forests to this distant southern land. He thought of Harrenhal, he thought of the Reach, and he thought of Winterfell. Legend holds that Torrhen met with his bannermen and with his Maester, who read to him accounts of ancient Valyria, of the power of dragons, and of strongholds burned down to their very foundations. By dawn, Torrhen had made his choice, not for his own honor, but for the survival of the North. When the sun rose, instead of the call to battle, Torrhen Stark stepped from his camp without his crown. He crossed the Trident with only a small retinue and came before Aegon's host. Before both armies, the king in the north knelt. He offered up the sword of Winterfell, the symbol of Stark rule, and swore fealty to Aegon Targaryen, who from that day became king of all Westeros. Aegon accepted the oath, returned the sword, and granted Torrhen the titles Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North. The North kept its lands, the North kept its laws, and the North kept its people. Many in the South called Torrhen a coward. In the North, the tale is told differently. They say Torrhen Stark was the king who saw what others refused to see, that glory is never worth the lives of one's people. No village was burned. No child died beneath dragonfire. Winterfell still stood. The northern forests remained green. and the blood of Stark continued to flow. No battle was fought between the North and Aegon. No songs were sung of sword and shield. Yet that silence made Torrhen Stark's kneeling one of the most significant moments in Westerosi history. Ice bowed to fire, not from fear, but from wisdom. And from that day on, the North became part of the Seven Kingdoms, not through bloodshed, but through a decision made in the long night. Dorne, the land that would not bend. If the other kingdoms bent before dragons through fire or reason, then Dorne bent before nothing at all. Dorne is unlike any other place in Westeros. It is a realm of sun-scorched deserts, treacherous mountains, and winding paths where outsiders are more likely to lose themselves than to find glory. The Dornish are hardened by heat and scarcity, accustomed to surviving conditions that would break northern armies within days. More than that, Dorne has memory. They remember Nymeria of the Rhoyne, the queen who led her people across the seas so they would never kneel before Valyria. In Dornish veins flows the blood of those who fled from dragons, and they swore never again to bow to dragonfire. Aegon Targaryen did not ignore Dorne. With Visenya and Rhaenys, he sent his dragons across the southern marches, burning border forts, taking smaller strongholds, and raising the dragon banners where the sigil of House Martell once flew. But Dorne did not give battle. No great host marched out to meet him. No king stood waiting at a city gate. When dragons appeared, castles were abandoned, and towns became empty shells. The Dornish vanished into deserts, mountains, and hidden passes where dragons could not reach. Aegon conquered land, but he did not conquer people. Then tragedy struck. During a reconnaissance flight near Hellholt, Rhaenys Targaryen and her dragon Meraxes were brought down by a massive Dornish scorpion bolt. Meraxes let out one final roar before crashing to the earth, killing Rhaenys with him. For the first time, one of Aegon's dragons was slain, and with it, the illusion of dragon invincibility was shattered. Rhaenys' death drove Aegon into fury. Dorne burned, villages were reduced to ash, orchards were destroyed. For years, dragons circled the southern skies, turning the land into scorched earth. Yet Dorne still did not kneel. The Dornish fought in shadows, with arrows, ambushes, and poison. When dragons flew away, they returned. When Targaryen armies encamped, they vanished. Every victory Aegon claimed was fleeting. Every conquered holding soon rose in rebellion. Fire can burn castles, but it cannot burn will. At last, the war changed form. From Sunspear, House Martell sent Aegon a sealed letter. No one knows what was written within. All that is known is this. After reading it, Aegon never attacked Dorne again. There was no treaty, no ceremony of submission, only silence. Dorne remained independent. The dragons withdrew. Dorne was the only realm Aegon could not conquer with fire and blood. Not because they were stronger, but because they refused to fight on the dragon's terms. The Dornish understood something the rest of Westeros would learn only later. Dragons need targets, and Dorne gave them none. So while the other kingdoms bent the knee and became the Seven Kingdoms, Dorne stood apart, unburned, unbowed, unforgotten. Dorne did not win through glory. They won through endurance. And in the history of Westeros, that is the rarest victory of all. The coronation of Aegon, the First. Aegon did not ascend the throne amid the clash of steel. He rose to kingship in a silence already conquered. Not Dragonstone, not Harrenhal, not the Field of Fire. Aegon chose Oldtown, the oldest city in Westeros, where history is written, where faith shapes the hearts of men, and where the High Tower casts its long shadow over both past and future. This choice was no coincidence. Oldtown was home to the High Septon, the living voice of the faith of the Seven. It held the Starry Sept, the holiest sanctuary in all the Seven Kingdoms. A king might be born of fire, but to rule, he needed recognition. Aegon understood this truth well. On the day of the coronation, lords from across Westeros gathered in Old Town. The Lannisters came from the west beneath the banner of the Golden Lion. The Tyrells arrived from the Fertile Reach, bearing the Green Rose. The Arryns sent envoys from the Eyrie. The Starks were represented from distant Winterfell. The Stormlands bent the knee under the name of House Baratheon. Only Dorne was absent. There was no pageantry of war, no clash of swords, only banners, cloaks, and the quiet understanding that an age had ended. Within the starry sept, before the 7 altars of the 7-faced god, Aegon knelt, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. The High Septon placed the crown upon his brow and proclaimed him King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms. Outside, 3 dragons roared, their voices echoing across the city like an oath beyond words. The 7 heard it. So did Westeros. Strangely, on that day of coronation, the Iron Throne did not yet exist. Aegon wore a crown, but he did not sit upon the ultimate symbol of power. He was in no hurry. He knew that authority did not reside in a chair, but in the acceptance of an entire continent. The Iron Throne would come later, forged from the swords of the defeated, tempered in dragonfire. When the ceremony ended, Aegon stepped onto the balcony overlooking Old Town. At his side stood Visenya and Rhaenys. Above them, 3 dragons circled the sky, dark silhouettes guarding a newborn dynasty. He was no longer a conqueror. He was Aegon the First Targaryen, not the King of Fire, not the King of Dragons, but the King of Westeros. From that day forth, the history of Westeros would no longer be measured by the rise and fall of forgotten kings. It would be recorded as before the conquest and after the conquest, an invisible line drawn between past and present. And standing at the heart of that line was a man wearing a crown, 3 dragons soaring above him, and an entire continent learning how to call him king. The forging of the Iron Throne. If the crown was a declaration of power, then the Iron Throne was a warning. After being anointed in Old Town, Aegon I did not hurry back to Dragonstone. He traveled across Westeros, receiving oaths of fealty, listening to words of submission laced with fear. Yet everywhere he went, he saw the same thing. Too many swords. Swords of defeated kings. Swords of fallen lords. Swords of men who believed steel could stand against dragonfire. Aegon did not wish them hidden away, nor did he wish them forgotten. He wanted his rule to sit upon the very weapons of war. The command went forth from Dragonstone. All swords taken from Aegon's enemies were to be brought to the mouth of the Blackwater Rush. It is said that more than 1,000 blades were piled together. Swords of the Gardeners, the Lannisters, the Whores, and countless lesser lords whose names would fade from history. When the time came, Balerion the Black Dread was summoned. The great dragon cast his shadow over the field. At Aegon's word, Balerion unleashed his black-red flame, melting steel, warping blades, fusing them into a jagged mass of twisted metal. No smith could have forged such a thing. Only a dragon. It was Visenya Targaryen who shaped the throne's final form. She ordered that no blade be blunted, no edge smoothed, no point made harmless. The swords were to jut outward, sharp and cruel. A king should never sit easily, Visenya said. Power must always remind its holder of its cost. Thus, the Iron Throne became both symbol and threat. It was not meant for the weak, not for the careless, and certainly not for those who forgot they sat upon the blood and bones of thousands. The Iron Throne was not placed in Old Town, nor on Dragonstone. Aegon chose the land where he first set foot on Westeros, beside the Blackwater Rush. There, a new city rose around the throne, built from mud, timber, and ambition. It was called King's Landing, not as ancient as Old Town, not as unyielding as Storm's End, not as mighty as Casterly Rock, but it was where power lived. At its heart, within what would become the Red Keep, the Iron Throne was raised, tall, cruel, and misshapen, like the history that had forged it. When Aegon the first sat the Iron Throne, there was no grand feast, no thunderous applause, only silence. It is said he sat upright, careful not to lean against any blade. He knew that one careless movement, one moment of weakness, would draw blood. And that was the meaning of the Iron Throne. A king may conquer with dragons, but to remain king, he must never grow careless. From that day on, the Iron Throne became the center of every plot, every betrayal, every oath of loyalty and ambition. It cut the flesh of unworthy kings. It drank the blood of those who believed themselves untouchable, and it whispered to all who dared approach it, "Westeros is never easy to rule." Thus ended the conquest, but not the struggle. The dragons had forged a kingdom, yet the throne they forged would outlive the dragons themselves. For centuries to come, men would kill, betray, and burn entire realms for the right to sit upon that jagged chair of swords. Some would rule wisely, many would not, most would bleed. And so the greatest lesson of Aegon's legacy was carved not in law, nor in fire, nor even in blood, but in cold, unyielding steel. Power is never truly won. It is only held until it cuts you down.